The U.S. Arab Radio Network is the largest Arab and Muslim radio network in America, broadcasting throughout the Midwest region Monday through Friday on WNZK AM 690. U.S. Arab Radio features Arabic and English language programming on every topic, from health, food, and culture to government, politics, and legal issues. Listen live to U.S. Arab Radio in Michigan, Toledo, Ohio, and Windsor, Canada on WNZK AM 690. And in Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia on WDMV 700 AM. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok. So join us every day on the U.S. Arab Radio Network and check out our website at www.arabradio.us.
Welcome to this week's episode of Two Guys on Politics with co-host former Illinois Congressman Bill Lipinski and myself, columnist at the Southwest News newspaper group and ArabNews.com in the Middle East. It's August 16, 2025, and this is Season 4, Episode 22. And Two Guys on Politics is broadcast on the U.S. Arab Radio Network on WNZK AM 690 radio. We invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel to get the latest episodes at twoguysonpolitics.com. And of course, you know, my co-host for this radio show is Bill Lipinski. Bill served as Democratic committeeman and alderman of Chicago's 23rd Ward. He was elected to Congress in 1983 and served through 2005. He currently writes the Right from the Center opinion column, also at the Southwest News newspaper group and Des Plaines Valley News. And I covered Chicago City Hall from 1976 through 1992, where I met Bill Lipinski and found him to probably be one of the best politicians in not just in Chicagoland, but in the state of Illinois. So we're going to be talking about four different issues today in our two segments. The first segment is we're going to address Trump and Putin's meeting in Alaska on Ukraine. And then we're going to talk about what's the solution to Chicago's problems. Can anybody really solve them? And then in the second segment, we're going to address the problems of local transportation, the CTA, PACE, and RTA. And we'll end it with a discussion about why punish American history, eliminating statues of Christopher Columbus and references to Confederate soldiers and more. All right, we're going to take a break right now, and when we come back, Bill and I will be talking about our first segment. So we will be right back right after these messages.
A car accident can change your life in an instant. As a result of a car accident, you may become unemployed. As a result of a car accident, you may need a lot of medical treatment. People think that insurance companies are on their side. Why? Because they're giving them one or two benefits. Are they giving them all the benefits they deserve? How would one know unless you consult with an attorney? Call the law offices of Jumana Kiruz at 248-557-3645. 248-557-3645.
With more than 30,000 successful in vitro fertilizations, IVF Michigan is now ranked as one of America's best fertility clinics according to Newsweek magazine. IVF Michigan fertility centers are the recognized leaders in high-quality fertility care. With locations in Bloomfield Hills and 9 other cities in Michigan and Ohio, IVF has experts in all aspects of the field. A founding member, American board-certified Dr. Nicholas Shama, is one of the leading reproductive endocrinologists in Michigan and Ohio. He has performed over 20,000 successful IVF cases, and it's helped thousands of couples fulfill their dreams of parenthood. When it's time to get personalized care from Dr. Nicholas Shama at one of America's best fertility clinics, call IVF Michigan Fertility Centers in Michigan and Ohio toll-free at 855-952-9600. 855-952-9600.
Okay, let's see. 3 orange folders, 2 blue folders, 1 white gym shirt, 1 box of 24 crayons.
Before you get started on that back-to-school list, get caught up on this one.
Measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, polio vaccine, chickenpox vaccine,
Protect your child from disease outbreaks. See a healthcare provider to get them up to date on vaccines and visit ivaccinate.org to learn more. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services and the Franny Strong Foundation.
The U.S. Arab Radio Network is the largest Arab and Muslim radio network in America, broadcasting throughout the Midwest region Monday through Friday on WNZK AM 690. U.S. Arab Radio features Arabic and English language programming on every topic, from health, food, and culture to government, politics, and legal issues. Listen live to U.S. Arab Radio in Michigan, Toledo, Ohio, and Windsor, Canada on WNZK AM 690. And in Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia on WDMV 700 AM. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok. So join us every day on the U.S. Arab Radio Network and check out our website at www.arabradio.us.
I'm Ray Hanania.
I'm Bill Lipinski.
And this is Two Guys on Politics. Our first topic in segment one, two topics we're going to do is Trump and Putin meeting in Alaska to discuss Ukraine. Sarah Palin isn't the most controversial person in Alaska that weekend, by the way, anymore. Now it seems like Trump has trumped her. Bill, what did you make of that meeting? I mean, what's going on?
Well, first of all, Trump said that he was going to that meeting and he was going to get a ceasefire in the war between Russia and Ukraine. Obviously, that did not occur. That's number one. Number two, Trump looked like an absolute beaten man when they held that. It was supposed to be a press conference. It wasn't a press conference because they didn't take any kind of questions. Putin, I think, spoke for 9 or 10 or 11 minutes. Trump spoke for 3 minutes. Which is very, very unusual for Donald Trump. But as I say, he looked like he was a beaten man. He looked like he was very downcast. He wasn't positive at all in what he had to say. Putin, on the other hand, looked like he was flying with the angels. He seemed to be up, enthusiastic. He praised Trump very, very significantly. Of course, everybody knows by now that if you're going to get any place with Trump, make sure you tell him what a great man he is, what a great, great president he is, okay? So I was disappointed in the results, but I will say this. I understand that on the flight back to America, Trump got on the phone, called and briefed a whole bunch of European nations, called Zelensky and briefed him on what went on, and he and Zelensky are scheduled to meet Monday in Washington, and maybe something still can come of this meeting. There is talk of a possibility of a meeting with Zelensky, Putin, and Trump coming up. There's nothing concrete about that, but some people are talking about it. I hope and pray we can get to a solution to this war, because the killing just goes on and on and on. And the longer it continues, the worse and worse I think conditions get for people in Europe and for people in America. We want this to be over with. We want to see the Ukrainians prevent the Russians from taking over any more of their property. They'd like to get some of it back. I don't know if that's going to be possible or not. But let's hope the meeting Monday is successful between Zelensky and Trump, and let's hope they get a third party in their next meeting.
Yeah, I saw the same thing, and I agree with a lot of what you said. This is clearly about Trump's ego. It's not about peace for Ukraine. This is about him. Everything he does is about himself. Everything he says is intended to make himself look better. His promises, the war will end in 24 hours. We'll end it in 3 days. We're still in Gaza. We're still in Ukraine. The economy stinks. He can't bring... his tariffs are causing more inflation and costs. He's a terrible president. And I think it's the more he's criticized because of his own failed actions, the more he tries to do dramatic things, like he's, on his TV celebrity show, The Apprentice, where he was the focus. He made the decisions. He controlled everything and decided who was good and who was bad. He hasn't stop that. He's still the same old egotist, with no answers or no solutions. Now, this bothered me. This meeting with Putin really bothered me because the International Criminal Court has issued an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin based on his war crimes. And these war crimes are legitimate charges. He's murdered and killed civilians in Ukraine. He's intentionally targeted civilian cities, not just military bases. And worst of all, he started a war unprovoked without ever engaging in diplomacy. If he had any grievances against Ukraine, they could have discussed that at the United Nations. He could have made them clear in the public. But instead, he's after rebuilding the old Soviet Union, and he has to be stopped. Why Trump would empower him? Because you're absolutely right, Bill. Putin left there with a smile. He didn't have to say much. He won just being there, not just in a meeting, but in a meeting on American territory in the face of an international arrest warrant that, as Americans who support justice, we should have arrested him as soon as he stepped off that plane. That would have been legal. But we didn't do that because Trump is more concerned about his image than he is about achieving anything. And clearly he failed. So, yeah, you're right. It was an embarrassment, I think, for Trump. Don't you think?
Oh, no question about it. I just loved when Putin, in his statement after they got together, said that, if Trump had been the president, this war would never have started. He would have done something to remediate the situation between the Ukraine and Russia. Man, if that's not buttering Trump up, because Trump has said that continually. If I was still president at that time, that war would never have started.
Well, Putin figured out Trump, right? He's recognized
no question
the only thing important is to butter him up with praise, and it's shallow and ridiculous praise. It doesn't matter how right or wrong it is. Trump soaks it in, and that's all it takes to get him to love you. So that's just horrible.
I would say so far, one thing that I can think of that is advantageous that has come out of this meeting, it has pulled the European nations more strongly together behind Ukraine, because I think they were very concerned for a while that Putin was going to, that Trump was going to turn his back on Ukraine and leave them hanging out there all by themselves. So the Europeans, I think, have gotten stronger in behalf of Ukraine, which is one good aspect. If they would really support Ukraine to the maximum, no troops, but in many, many other ways, equipment, money, intelligence, and if the United States would do the same thing, no troops though, I believe, we could stop the Russians where they're at, and the Russians would wind up wanting to sue for peace. I mean, they have lost 400,000 soldiers. I mean, it's a meat grinder there. Unfortunately, their population is 6 times that of the Ukraine. So they can continue those staggering losses. Ukraine certainly cannot. But getting the European nations behind Ukraine, I think, is going to help the situation, hopefully in the short run, because I just don't see this war going on much longer without it spilling over into maybe Russia or Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia. You never know what Putin's going to do. He smiles, he waves, but he is one, well, I don't know exactly what to call him, but I don't trust him as far as I can throw him.
A terrible person.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, and while they were having these so-called discussions at this so-called summit, Putin was still bombing civilian cities in Ukraine.
Absolutely.
So clearly, Putin saw this as an opportunity to benefit himself. By coming to the United States, it was like a snub at the international call for him being arrested. That's why he was so happy. He was in the catbird seat. It just reminded me of something. Now, I wasn't alive at the time, but I've read a lot, and I'm sure you have. When Neville Chamberlain in 1938 went to Germany to talk to Adolf Hitler about, we'll give you some of this land that you claim belongs to Germany. We'll work something out if you promise not to go to war. And Hitler said, yeah, don't worry about it. We're not going to invade anybody. And of course, we saw what happened. That was always the word appeasement took a dive.
Peace in our time. Peace in our time. That's
right.
What Chamberlain had to say.
And it was labeled as appeasement, which destroyed the significance of the word appeasement. It means like surrendering,
Right.
to evil. And that's what Trump appeared to be doing. The first thing I thought of was, this is Neville Chamberlain and Adolf Hitler again, going through the same motions, like nobody learned any history. And honestly, I'm not sure Trump really understands history or spent any time, learning history. I mean, he spent all that time with, on his celebrity TV, and Jeffrey Epstein palling around with his buddy and other Democrats, not just Republicans. They're both guilty. But this is not a guy who understands history or learns lessons from it. It's all about a guy who wants to benefit himself. But the other thing is, I think it's, in a way, it's kind of sad, because the United States has always been the foundation of NATO and our European alliances. We were the rock that kept everybody together. That is collapsing, and Trump has questioned NATO. I think there was talk about how they're going to quit NATO. They're not going to support NATO. They're not going to give money to NATO. And, I mean, Russia isn't attacking us, but if Russia were to attack us, NATO would be the front line of our defense.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't it worry you? I mean, what he's done to NATO?
Yes, it concerns me very, very much. Fortunately, they have rallied around supporting Ukraine, so the loss may not be as significant as you and I think, but he certainly has done nothing whatsoever to strengthen NATO. All he has done is sow seeds of doubt in the leaders of the NATO. Well, will America be there when we need them? That is the problem. You cannot be the leader of the free world, spreading democracy and freedom, unless the countries following you believe in you and believe that you will be there in the tough times. And certainly Trump has not proved that he's going to be there in the tough times. He keeps talking about the 8 or 9 countries that he's brought peace to, and he should win the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah.
What are these 8 or 9 countries? Do you know?
No, there's none. He has brought peace to no one. Well, what he did was he got a couple non-combatant Middle East countries to sign peace accords. Morocco and Israel were not attacking each other, so they signed a peace accord. The United Arab Emirates, where Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, has huge $1 billion in investments, were not attacking each other, but he did get Israel and the UAE to sign a peace accord. The problem is that he can get these fluff things done, but nothing of real consequence. The other thing, I just want to go back to this whole thing about Trump's attitude. By focusing the way he does on the Ukraine war, instead of focusing on standing up for democracy, defending the victim of, tyranny and war crimes, like Ukraine, he's kind of walked away from that. And that's allowed members of Congress and some of our leaders to focus on other things like, how much money are we spending, without finishing the sentence to say, how much money are we spending to defend democracy and our future? When you put it one way, that, hey, we're spending a lot of money, people are going, what are we wasting our money for? But if you tell people we're spending a lot of money to ensure that we don't get destroyed, I think people would support that spending. But he's weakened that argument. So it's easy for people to say, why are we spending so much money on this useless war? He's made it useless. And Biden, terrible leadership.
Yes.
This up. I don't blame Trump for everything, but I do blame Trump for making it worse.
Yeah, well, I will agree with that. But Biden did nothing. Biden is the one that started, supporting the Ukraine just so far, just to keep bleeding the Russians. Don't make them too angry. Don't get them too upset, but keep bleeding them as much as possible. We'll use the Ukrainians as scapegoats, to help reduce the strength of the Russians. They've done a pretty good job so far. I cannot believe that they've lost 400,000 troops in that battle.
I think it's more even.
Well, it may even be more, but that's the number that they were throwing around yesterday.
Can you imagine if our police were told, hey, listen, if you come up to a violent armed criminal, try to be nice with them, try to talk them down. If they pull a gun on you, don't assume they're going to kill you. Try to reason with them. Talk about their mom and how she'd be very unhappy with their lifestyle. That doesn't work. When you have a criminal that's going to threaten you, you need to be tough. You can't compromise. And Biden compromised, and I think that was a big mistake on his part. And Trump is just totally wants to make himself look good, like he's going to roll the dice and something's good is going to happen so he can get the Nobel Peace Prize.
Do you have any idea what you think is going to happen with this situation?
Well, it's going to go on until we get a better president, somebody that believes in the principles of why America is so important and why we're the leader of the free world, because we're supposed to lead and we're supposed to be tough and we're supposed to risk everything to defend our democracy and our freedom. Not question whether, oh, should we spend $1 or should we spend $5? Maybe we should be nice to Putin. Well, so what? He killed thousands of people. Let's compromise. Why get into a conflict? We need somebody that goes back to the original leadership of why this country was great. And we just haven't had that for a while, I think.
Well, unfortunately, Franklin Roosevelt is dead. Harry Truman is dead. Dwight Eisenhower is dead. Ronald Reagan is dead. I don't know. Let's see. Barack Obama, was he that tough?
No.
I don't think so.
He had great words. He was fun to listen to, but most of his words were unfortunately meaningless. He made some good principles. He talked about.
What about Bush? What do you think of Bush?
Bush was, he's a great frat boy. I would have loved to have been in a fraternity with him when I was in college at Northern Illinois and the University of at Circle and the University of Illinois. But he didn't run that administration. That was his Dick Cheney, the war criminal in his administration. And I think they really crossed the line in terms of opening the door to violating civil and human rights, the way they played emotion over the rule of law. So yeah, things have really gotten
Sleepy Joe didn't show much leadership either. I don't know who ran his government though. Maybe it was his wife. I don't know.
The swamp. It's true about the swamp in Washington, D.C., Bill. There are people, you're in Congress 2 years. In your case, you were there, 22 years, 24?
Yes, 22 years.
22 years. You were there for a while, but a lot of Congress members are there 2 years, maybe 4 years, and then they leave. But the people around them continue to do, things, the aides and the administrations of all these different people, they last forever. And, they got jobs and they don't want to lose them. So they do everything they do to keep them. So I don't know. Seeing Trump and Putin was just disgraceful, in my opinion. And
well, you talk about getting a strong president. Do you see any potential strong presidents on the horizon at the present time?
Well, I see a couple strong people, but the price of that strength, we never find anybody that's 100%.
Oh, no.
If we find 60 or 70%, we're going to be lucky. So if I agree with 60% of the views, disagree with 40, and they're strong, that's probably the best we can do. Trump, I disagree with 70%, and I still don't think he's a strong leader. He does some good ideas, but I still have yet to see any of that come through. He's the one that hurt our property taxes deductions, and now he restored it. Okay, that's a good thing, but that's ridiculous that he made me suffer for 6 years since that law passed. I couldn't even deduct all my property taxes the way I used to be able to do that. I was limited, and that really hurt the mainstream American.
And if you live in Cook County, you have a lot of property taxes to deduct.
Yes, we do. And talking about Cook County, we can talk about we can shift gears if you want.
Sure.
Talk about the biggest drain on Cook County, which is the city of Chicago and all its problems. I don't know. Polling shows that Mayor Brandon Johnson, who seems like a nice guy, I think he really is genuinely a good guy. I just don't think he has what it takes to come up with the answers to the problems that Chicago has had all these years. I mean, when you look back at mayors of Chicago, none of them have really provided answers to the problems, but they did make you feel good. Like Rich Daley was in there for what, 20 years, 21 years, I think, almost as long as his father.
He was there longer than his father, believe it or not.
Yes, I think you're right. I apologize. I think you're right. He was there longer than his father. But his only achievement was he calmed things down. He never had really didn't have answers to things. He just made people feel more comfortable and confident that things were going to be better. And but they really weren't. It's the same problems. Crime goes up and down. The economy is really run by the national, factors. Property taxes continue to rise. The pensions, they give away the pensions, because it's part of the old patronage machine. It was one of the big benefits to get people to work for politicians. We give you a big pension if you stay in long enough. And then you can have multiple pensions, not just one. So we are in deep poo-poo. We are in trouble in Chicago, and Chicago is dragging the county down. And it's important for the people in the suburbs to look at Chicago and try and find a way to help Chicago get back on its feet. And I'm not sure people are willing to do that.
Well, I have to, this poll that was in the Sun-Times a couple of days ago, the numbers against Brandon Johnson are just absolutely earth-shaking as far as I'm concerned. Only 26% of the people in the city of Chicago believe he's doing a good job. 26% only. Even the aldermen, 44% of the aldermen are considered to be doing a good job. In Pritzker, I don't understand this, but he gets 64% approval rating in the city of Chicago. It's got to be because in comparison to Johnson, he is so much better. He's a pygmy also, but standing next to Johnson, he looks like a giant.
Yes, it is relative.
But when you get into the makeup of the city of Chicago, white voters, 20% of white voters approve of the job that Johnson is doing. Okay. Black voters, now here's the one to me that is really staggering. Black voters, only 38% of black voters believe he's doing a good job. Latino, Hispanics, 28%. Yeah, I don't know how many Pacific Islanders or Asians that we have in the city of Chicago. I'm sure the number isn't very large, but he only gets 10% support amongst those people. Now, with those numbers, it is incredible that he could possibly get reelected. But who's running against him at the present time that we know of?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a field of maybe 8 to 10 candidates again in this open primary, and all you need is 26% of the vote to win.
And he's got it
to the runoff, and you're right, he has that vote. So I think he is going to get into the runoff. And the irony is, though, these people that say that they support Johnson are like a lot of people who say they support any politician. As long as the politician does something for them, they're going to support him, regardless of how bad of a leader they may or may not be.
Oh, that's true.
So even his 26% or whatever he has of support, it's low. I think it's a lot lower because people are tired of property taxes. People are tired of crime. Even though the crime has gone down a little bit, it's still significant. People are impacted by the national economy, how it hurts Chicago, and by Governor Pritzker, who really is a contributor to all these problems because he reigns over one of the 48th worst states in the country. We rank 48th at the bottom, almost at the bottom of the list, for being one of the worst states for finances and schools and all these other things. And he hasn't done anything about that at all, except ignore it. So I think
that makes him a leading Democratic candidate for president.
Exactly. That's the big qualification, apparently, if you want to be president these days. You have to have a terrible record that's shocking.
He has moved more and more and more to the left because he wants to run for president. He doesn't want any Democrat coming at him from the left. So he has become more and more liberal all the time.
Yeah.
And he's never done a very good job here in Illinois, I don't think.
No,
Because once again, he really was not a public official in the past. He was not a politician in the past. Being a good public official, you must be a good politician also. If you're not a good politician, you're not going to be a good public official because you do not know how to handle many, many situations that comes up. I think Brandon Johnson is the same thing. I think Brandon Johnson might be a very, very nice man. You may like to have him live next door to you, but you don't want him running your government because he's had no experience at any level whatsoever in government. Those are big problems as far as I am concerned. We need people who have had experience before we put them into jobs like mayor or governor or president.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, Chicago and Illinois face huge problems, the debt, the deficit, crime. I mean, you can go through the housing, homelessness, poverty, the poor education system. People often ask me who learned me English. I said I went to the public schools. That's where I was learned English. So, but the point is that a good leader can't, I mean, in all honesty, when you're Chicago and Illinois, you can't answer all the problems. You can't solve.
No, you can't.
But you could be smart enough to pick on one or two and get those done and show people that it's a step-by-step process. But he hasn't identified with anything. Brandon Johnson's problem is he's trying to address everything, and partly because he's never been a politician before until recently, and he thinks that his job is to answer every challenge and problem that he confronts. What he should do is pick something that impacts the most people.
Right.
Get that resolved. And if he were to do that, I think his numbers would go up. But he doesn't seem to understand. He thinks he has to solve everything, and that's impossible. Same thing with Pritzker. Pritzker avoids solving anything to get away from the issues. He leaves it on other people so that he thinks it won't hold him back when he uses his billions of dollars to buy his way into our political system and get elected president. He is not going to get elected president. I don't care how much weight he loses. It's not going to change his look at all.
You don't care how much weight he loses or how much money he spends, huh?
He's been losing a lot of weight. I mean, he looks a lot better than he did. It shows that, that maybe you're not living, so recklessly. But there's nothing that he can do to make himself better. Right now, his money is what drives his power. That's it. There's no great ideas in Illinois. Illinois is the 48th worst state. And if I were the governor, my goal would be to bring us up to the 38th worst state and move us up and show, hey, we're not there yet, but we're climbing. We're getting better. And if he had done something like that, addressed our image, I would say we need to give him a chance, but his money is the only thing that's given him a chance to stay in power for as long as he has. And
that's too bad the Democrats, don't have more control in Illinois. They have a supermajority in the House.
Right.
They have a supermajority in the Senate. They have a governor. If they just had a little bit more, maybe they could do some redistricting and get a few more senators and a few more House members.
Well, maybe having all that power makes them complacent. Why do I have to work? We control the state. There's no Republican threat, especially in the 6-county region. The Republicans are worthless. And yet the irony is most people, I think, are conservative on the national level.
Yes, it is.
But on the local level, they're stuck with choosing between Democrats. Some are good and some are bad. So it really is a quandary. Illinois and Chicago were attached at the hip to trouble. And I'm just not sure we're going to get out of it anytime soon. And a lot of people are thinking you got to move out of Illinois to get away from the problems that are here. But I think those problems chase us. You can't just leave. You got to find a solution.
A lot of people are moving to Indiana and have been for a while. And I think they're going to start moving to Iowa very shortly also. The Illinois population, the city of Chicago population, both of them are shrinking considerably from census to census.
All right, Bill, listen, we've gone on with two big topics. We got two more in segment two. Why don't we take a break? And when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about the problems of local transportation. And if we can, we'll talk about the history of wokeness and how we condemn Christopher Columbus and Confederate soldiers when these were Americans, or Confederate soldiers were Americans, and regardless of whether we agree or not, they were part of a political system, and it was part of the transformation of our country. They were still Americans. We should still treat them as Americans, even if we disagreed with them. We'll be right back right after these messages.
Welcome to El Shaba Restaurant at 2029 15 Mile Road in Sterling Heights, where you'll be treated to the finest in Middle Eastern cuisine. Enter into the exotic atmosphere of tantalizing aromas and enjoy our chicken or beef shawarma hummus, kebabs, specially seasoned Syrian-style beef burgers, babia fatouche salad, soups and sandwiches, plus desserts that include baklava, ice cream, and more. Just call in your order at 586-565-6661 or go to our website and place your order now at elshaba.square.site. That's elshaba.square.site. Then you'll see all there is to choose from. Try us today. You'll like us. We are located at 2097 15 Mile Road in Sterling Heights. Life for Relief and Development has now been rated as one of the best charities for humanitarian aid. Life's humanitarian projects span the globe, and Life is celebrating its 30th anniversary of providing essential life-saving aid to people and communities in 36 countries, regardless of race, color, religion, or cultural background. Where there is life, there is hope. And when disaster occurs here or around the world, including being one of the first responders to the Turkey-Syria earthquake crisis, Life for Relief and Development rushes in to provide food, medical aid, and shelter to those in need. We are looking to help the earthquake victims, and we take 0% overhead on emergency donations. So please help improve these efforts. Learn more about our involvement to help the helpless and bring hope where it's needed most, and make your tax-deductible donation to Life for Relief and Development now at lifeusa.org or call 248-424-7493. That's 248-424-7493.
Okay, let's see. 3 orange folders, 2 blue folders, 1 white gym shirt, 1 box of 24 crayons.
Before you get started on that back-to-school list, get caught up on this one.
Measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, polio vaccine, chickenpox vaccine.
Protect your child from disease outbreaks. See a healthcare provider to get them up to date on vaccines, and visit ivaccinate.org to learn more. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services and the Franny Strong Foundation.
The U.S. Arab Radio Network is the largest Arab and Muslim radio network in America, broadcasting throughout the Midwest region Monday through Friday on WNZK AM 690. U.S. Arab Radio features Arabic and English language programming on every topic, from health, food, and culture to government, politics, and legal issues. Listen live to U.S. Arab Radio in Michigan, Toledo, Ohio, and Windsor, Canada on WNZK AM 690. And in Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia on WDMV 700 AM. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok. So join us every day on the U.S. Arab Radio Network and check out our website at www.arabradio.us.
I'm Ray Hanania.
I'm Bill Lipinski.
And this is segment 2 of Two Guys on Politics, where we're going to be talking about local transportation challenges, CTA, PACE, RTA, why punish American history, topics of Christopher Columbus and Confederate soldiers. And then we'll add a little segment on the Middle East and what's happening in Gaza and Netanyahu and everything that's happening there. Bill, you always understood transportation in the state as a member of Congress. What are the problems facing local transportation, the CTA, PACE, RTA, and the rest of the state?
Well, Ray, back when Rod Blagojevich became governor of the state of Illinois, at the beginning of his administration, I had a considerable amount of influence with him. And I convinced him to establish a task force on transportation, because we had problems with transportation then. We have problems with transportation now. It's a funding that is the problem. But the real problem is the duplication of services performed by the RTA, CTA, Metra, and PACE. Now, what I had proposed many, many years ago was a consolidation of all those entities. And it should be the city of Chicago, the Cook County outside of the city of Chicago, and the collar counties. Those are the three different areas that are really impacted by mass transportation in the Northeast. We should get rid of the CTA, Metra, PACE, and the RTA. We should create one entity that will take care of all of transportation in northeastern Illinois. In fact, I even suggested including the railroad situation, the passenger railroad situation in that. Right now, Ray, we have far too much duplication of what is going on. On the southwest side of the city of Chicago, we have the Orange Line going downtown. Okay, we now have PACE buses running down the Stevenson Expressway into the city of Chicago. That's duplication. You don't need two entities like that. If you had a consolidation where it was just one entity, you wouldn't have those problems. And I can recite to you a number of other situations throughout the metropolitan area where there is so much duplication. On top of that, what do you think it costs to have board of directors on each one of these entities?
Right.
They all get paid. In many cases, they also get automobiles. They get some kind of pension plan. They get some kind of hospitalization. If we could do away with so many of those positions, and those positions are not held by some blue collar person who's struggling to get by, these positions are held by political people who ran for public office in most cases. And after a year or two, they decided to retire, or they were defeated, so they get rewarded. They're put on the RTA, PACE, etc. Okay? We don't need that. We can set up where we have 5 people from the city, 5 people from suburban Cook, 5 people from the collar counties. Every 2 years, we choose a different chairman. City of Chicago, then the collar counties, then somebody from suburban Cook. So there's no political favoritism. No one is the chairman longer than 2 years, so they really can't do that much damage in behalf of their entity. We save tons of money on not having to pay the salaries, the pensions, the hospitalization of all these board members. And we have an entity that's number one purpose is to cooperate, make sure all these entities are cooperating and make sure that they are being efficient. Yes, we want to move people in Cook County and in northern Illinois, but we want to do it efficiently. That's my solution to the problem. Now, there is a state representative I was reading in the paper today that says in the veto session, funding will come forward for transportation. That's fine. It's happened many, many times before. It'll happen again. But we need real reform. We need to eliminate all these agencies and make it into one strong central entity.
Yeah, I remember. Well, first of all, I agree with you. We got too many overlapping bureaucracies and governments that, agencies, the RTA, CTA, and PACE. You're right, we should just create one transportation agency that oversees the entire 6-county region, which is half the state population.
Absolutely.
And then have a transportation system that covers the rest of the state, I guess, or however they want to do it. But yeah, we have like 3 different agencies that cost a fortune. We're paying taxes for everything. People are multiple bureaucracies, and they retire with these huge pensions. Pensions are a big problem, especially in this state, because we tend to, our goal is a pension, not solving the problems. When you get into, for some, not everybody. But the other thing is that I remember when I was at the first getting into journalism, and I was covering Chicago City Hall in 1979, 1980, the city of Chicago the state of Illinois came up with a plan to tax everybody in the suburbs to pay for the CTA. I remember writing a column about, a couple columns. When I wasn't writing about Jane Byrne and City Hall politics, I was writing about the problems with transportation. And I remember writing a column, taking that on, and I was pilloried by everybody. Even Mike Royko criticized me in a column because I was a suburbanite. I left Chicago, so I don't have a right to talk. Something along those lines he wrote. And when I met him years later, he said, that I wasn't completely wrong, but Chicago rules the roost in the six-county region, and the six-county benefits from Chicago, and we should pay taxes to support Chicago because all of us travel to Chicago from our suburban homes to work. And I said, well, the reason we're traveling from our suburban homes to work in Chicago is because Chicago is a failed city and we fled Chicago, but we still love the idea of Chicago. And that's where our jobs were before we left. So it's a quandary. And that same problem is coming up again today. There's a tax, it's called the exit tax that the state of Illinois is considering, in which an Illinoisan who wanted to flee Illinois, who wants to move, because there are all these people saying to move, they're going to charge them $1,400. And that money, most of it would go to the CTA and Brandon Johnson to help with public transportation. Some of it would go to PACE and the RTA. But you're right, no one's looking at transportation. They're looking at the bureaucracy. How do we help the CTA? What do we do to offset concerns about the RTA and PACE, which are second thoughts? The CTA is always the priority, and PACE and RTA are secondary thoughts. So we should be looking at transportation. How do we resolve transportation? And your idea consolidating into one agency, I think, is the best I've ever heard in a long time.
Well, I thank you very much for that.
And Bill, by the way, one point, I'm sorry,
Sure.
this is really important, that if you live in Chicago and you move from Chicago, you're exempt from the tax. The tax only applies to people who live outside of Chicago who want to leave the state. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that was so important. Sorry.
I remember once upon a time there was a state senator that wanted to give you money to move out of the state of Illinois if you move someplace else.
We both knew him. He was a good guy.
Oh, very good guy.
It was a bad idea, but
it was a bad idea, yes. But he had it and he promoted it. But Ray, here's something very important to remember. The CTA was created for political purposes.
Yeah.
The RTA was created for political purposes. PACE was created for political purposes. Same way with Metra, okay? They're created for political purposes to handle transportation in their area, but to give people jobs. Commissioners, transportation experts, that's what they were created to do.
Right.
Now, maybe there was a time and a place for that, and maybe we could afford that, but we can't afford that any longer. Right. If you want to really take a radical approach to transportation in the state of Illinois, you could transfer all the authority to the state of Illinois, and the Secretary of Transportation in the state of Illinois could designate some employee of his to handle mass transit in his office that would take care of the whole state of Illinois. I don't know if you could ever get that done. I have not advocated that, but that is a position that some people have advocated. Something radical has to be done.
Yeah, I think that would be, we didn't do our column segment in this episode of Two Guys on Politics because we had so much to talk about, but I think that would make a great column, Bill, that you should write to dig deep into it, because it is a great idea, and I haven't heard anybody else talk about it. It would be worth a story to put that out. Let's shift over now to the issue of wokeness. And what I mean by that is, how we deny American history for the sake of being politically correct. And politically correct keeps shifting. Things change every 20 years. And as we move on, things that we used to say and do in the 1950s don't apply or are considered abhorrent and offensive today in 2025. So things change, our attitudes change, but we should still be respectful of the past, whether it was appropriate or not. You can't take things out of context. This whole thing about denying our history by destroying statues and memorials to people, Americans. These are Americans, whether they served in the Union or in the Confederacy during the Civil War. That war was fought to bring justice, and the Union won. You know, our side, which I believe I would have supported had I lived back, you know, in that century, 150 or more years ago. I would have supported the Union, but that doesn't mean that we disrespected Americans who served in the Confederacy. And not everybody was in support of slavery. Slavery was what the activists made the war into. That was the focus, and it was a big issue. And I'm against slavery, and it was right to end slavery. But the truth is, they didn't really end slavery at all. Even the Union soldiers, they won the Civil War, and Abraham Lincoln, he was assassinated, lost his life. But in the end, slavery continued. You know, it wasn't until the 1960s, you know, when Johnson came in, that he did the Civil Rights Act. We're talking about 100 years later that we still had slavery. So the point is, there were other issues that were being fought for, and I don't think we should just outright disrespect Confederate soldiers simply because we want to apply the slavery issue, which is a wrong policy to support slavery. We want to blame them. There are many other things that they were fighting for that had nothing to do with slavery. And the same with Christopher Columbus. I don't know, maybe other people discovered America before Christopher Columbus, but what did they do with it? Christopher Columbus did something with it. And as a result of him discovering America, America grew with immigrants coming from other countries. And yeah, we treated the Native Americans badly, you know, the Indians and everybody. We treated them poorly, but I think that's still a separate issue. The fact is that this country was built on what Christopher Columbus opened the door to, and we should acknowledge him, not shame him, you know, because some people think that that's the way to acknowledge Native Americans. No, the best way to acknowledge Native Americans is to give them their rights.
And they certainly have gotten a lot of rights now that they own just about every casino in the country.
And they accepted that. It wasn't like we bribed them. They accepted the casinos. They wanted it.
Now, a perfect example of a statue being removed of someone who I don't think should have had a statue removed was Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee was a great general in the Civil War, prior to the Civil War. He was asked by President Lincoln to be the number one man in the Union Army. So how bad could this man have been?
Right.
The North wanted him to be their number one general. Right. Now, he turned it down because in those days, loyalty to states, frankly, was more important than loyalty to the central government. He became the head of the Confederate Army. He did a brilliant job. That war should have been over in a year and a half, but because of his ability as a general, he managed to drag that war out quite a long time, far beyond how quickly. We didn't really start winning that war until we had a middle-class guy who was on a farm because he had been just about kicked out of the army because he couldn't control his drinking, by the name of U.S. Grant, became head of the army. Once that happened, he knew how to fight Robert E. Lee. We won that war. But prior to it, we were losing that war. But to me, Lee is a perfect example. He was a great American. He fought on the side that we think was wrong in the Civil War, but we shouldn't tear down his statue. And there are many others like that. Now, there's a fellow by the name of Bedford Forrest, I think. He was a Confederate general. He's also the guy that founded the Ku Klux Klan after the Civil War. Now, I think his statue should have been torn down. It should have been broken up, and it should have been thrown to the wind, because that was an individual who fought the war strictly because of slavery. And as you mentioned earlier, there was a lot of things that were involved in that war besides slavery.
Yeah, and listen, the way I look at it, even his statue should be up, and I'll tell you why. It isn't the statue that we should be concerned about. It's what the statue represented, who the person is, and we should be remembering that, good or bad or ugly, because if we erase the bad, how do we see the bad? How do we correct the past if we're not confronted with it all the time? You know, one example might be when I go to City Hall, they post the pictures of all the former mayors. When Jane Byrne was elected, she waited 2 years before she would put Mike Bolandic's picture up on the wall because she hated him so much because of what she believed Bolandic did to her husband, Jay McMullen. Now, that was wrong. Whether Bolandic was a good mayor or a bad mayor, his picture should have gone up as part of our history so that when kids go to City Hall, they say, who is that guy? What did he do? You go to Grant Park, you see statue of Christopher Columbus. It's not a symbolism of oppression of Native Americans. It's a symbol of our history. So people would ask, who was that man and what did he do? And I think that those questions are questions we don't ask today. Why would we champion an illegal alien and put them above Americans who we didn't agree with?
Well,
it makes no sense to me.
You make a very strong argument, but I still have to disagree with you in regards to the guy that founded the Ku Klux Klan. He fought his war, the Civil War. He lost, but he continued to fight that war even long after it was over by trying to intimidate, once again, enslave Black people. He was wrong morally and in every other possible way. We should not honor him. We should not forget him. But we shouldn't honor him with a statue.
Well, let me give you an example. When I traveled to the Baltic through the Baltic Sea a few months back, and going to all these Baltic countries, I stopped in Germany, and I was in Berlin. We did a trip to Berlin, and there was a little memorial. Not even a memorial. It was just a plaza, cement plaza, that was originally Adolf Hitler's bunker, and it was just cement. But there was still a little sign that said, here's what the bunker looked like. Here's where Hitler was burned and killed. It was just a sign. That was it. Now, I'm not saying we should have a memorial, but to not have had that, to go to Berlin and not think about what Hitler did and not see the bunker, I think is a major mistake that undermines
I would agree with you in that case.
I'm not saying put up a memorial to Adolf Hitler in Berlin, but I'm saying there should be something so that it makes people remember what happened, good, bad, or ugly. And they have the Berlin Wall. Part of the Berlin Wall is still up there. Why is the Berlin Wall still up there? They took it down, but they do have this huge segment still up there. And they even had the SS headquarters underground still intact, where you could go and look at that and see what was happening. One of the most vicious militaries in the world, but it reminded people of that evil that it was. So,
well, Ray, do you think that we should have a statue someplace to King George during the reign of the American Revolutionary War?
Yeah, listen, I think it's educational. I don't think it should be a memorial to him. I think it should be a reminder of history, of who he was and who he did. How many people think of King George and what he did to us? We don't.
Almost no one.
Right, because it's been as if he's been given a pass. He should be held accountable for what he did. And the only way to be held accountable is to be in somebody's face, in the face of the public. So anyway, I mean, it's a touchy topic for us to, obviously talk about, but I think that it should be discussed more, because we're losing out, and the people that should be punished are actually being given a pass, so we don't hold them accountable for what they did and what they
We really should thank King George, because he had his choice between putting out a full force effort to keep the American colonies or go fight Napoleon, and he decided to go fight Napoleon. If he had not made that decision, I'm not so sure we would have won that Revolutionary War. So we should have some kind of memorial thanking him for picking the right guy to fight.
Well, Bill, we don't have much time, but let me do a quick little overview. The Middle East is still a mess. The food agency that the U.S. and Israel created is still very controversial. They are killing these people that are coming to get food, which is beyond me. The media is inundated with videos of children and women being killed by Israeli soldiers, snipers that are shooting them. A sniper doesn't just shoot somebody, they target them and they hit them in the head. You know, it's not an accident. Snipers are not an accident. They're trained. They don't miss. 99% of what they shoot at they shoot them and kill them. There's a real problem, and it has a backlash in this country that Americans are seeing how terrible Israel's government is. And Israel's government is slowly tearing apart the opportunity to have peace in the Middle East. Maybe we should discuss that on our next Two Guys on Politics. We don't have much more time. We probably have to stop right now. So any final thoughts, Bill, before we end it?
No, I just say I'm Bill Lipinski, a fellow American, and you wrap it up, Ray, and use the time for whatever you would like.
And I'm Ray Hanania, and we want to thank everybody for joining us at Two Guys on Politics. Remember, go to twoguysonpolitics.com and subscribe so you can get the updates. And also, you can email us with any thoughts you have. Thank you, everybody. Have a great week. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Are you going to start a restaurant or grocery store soon? Do you need floor plans and designs? Call Najee Abood at 734-744-9796. Do you want to buy kitchen and restaurant equipment at discount prices? Call Najee Abood now, 734-744-9796. New Concept Products and Design, the trademark of kitchen equipment. 5% discount on all purchases of $75,000 or more. New Concept Products and Design, new location, 31185 Schoolcraft in Livonia. Learn more at www.newconceptproducts.com. Call Najee Abood, 734-744-9796.
Life for Relief and Development has now been rated as one of the best charities for humanitarian aid. Life's humanitarian projects span the globe, and Life is celebrating its 30th anniversary of providing essential life-saving aid to people and communities in 36 countries, regardless of race, color, religion, or cultural background. Where there is life, there is hope. And when disaster occurs here or around the world, including being one of the first responders to the Turkey-Syria earthquake crisis, Life for Relief and Development rushes in to provide food, medical aid, and shelter to those in need. We are looking to help the earthquake victims, and we take 0% overhead on emergency donations. So please help improve these efforts. Learn more about our involvement to help the helpless and bring hope where it's needed most, and make your tax-deductible donation to Life for Relief and Development now at lifeusa.org or call 248-424-7493. That's 248-424-7493.
Ziyad brand. Quality products from our family to yours. Ziyad Brothers Importing offers the finest quality products, including brands like Sultan, Kraft, Nestle, Hook, Rico Picon, Donna, and many more. Ask your retailer to carry these fine products because you deserve the very best. For more information, visit our website at www.ziyad.com. That's www.ziyad.com. Ziyad, quality products from our family to yours.
The U.S. Arab Radio Network is the largest Arab and Muslim radio network in America, broadcasting throughout the Midwest region Monday through Friday on WNZK AM 690. U.S. Arab Radio features Arabic and English language programming on every topic, from health, food, and culture to government, politics, and legal issues. Listen live to U.S. Arab Radio in Michigan, Toledo, Ohio, and Windsor, Canada on WNZK AM 690. And in Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia on WDMV 700 AM. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok. So join us every day on the U.S. Arab Radio Network and check out our website at www.arabradio.us.